on this edition of Somerville Neighborhood News. Check out a Tufts rally to support undocumented students, learn about youth homelessness in the city, go to a march in downtown Boston, discover a nationwide contest to help Somerville fight climate change, and hear from an alderman and a reporter about some of the criticisms of the proposed new zoning code. These stories and more on Somerville Neighborhood News.
Hello and welcome to Somerville Neighborhood News. Today is April 21st, 2015. I'm Justin Schreier. Somerville Neighborhood News is your bi-monthly newscast and online source for multimedia news. It's a community service production of SCATV created by staff, interns, and your neighbors. We bring you the news every 2 weeks on Channel 3 and on our website, somervilleneighborhoodnews.org. We begin up at Tufts. On April 7th, students at the university rallied to demand the administration give undocumented students financial aid. The rally was organized by Tufts United for Immigrant Justice and the national group Student Immigrant Movement, also known as SIM.
Migration is a human right. God did not build borders or 18-foot-high fences. It is degrading to have to deny yourself the right to walk to and from wherever you want. Who has the right to deny anyone the passage of freedom?
SIM campaign coordinator Carlos Rojas shared his story.
We arrived in Boston in 1999, and I was immediately in love with school. And so I went to school. I went to the Boston Public Schools all of my life. And it wasn't until I was maybe 16 that I started to understand that my status in the United States was going to be a problem. And it really started to hit home when I went to my guidance counselor to ask, what can I do to make sure I go to college? This is an issue not just for students like me, but it's an issue that affects every single one of us. And it's about what kind of country we want to be. And so I'm really excited that 30 plus institutions across the country are coming out like Tufts University in support of undocumented students.
Tufts Dean Lee Coffin surprised the crowd.
Tufts is proud to announce a change in the university's undergraduate admission policy. Tufts will now consider all undocumented students as domestic applicants, including but not limited to students with deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA. I am also delighted to share the news that this policy change is retroactive to the just completed undergraduate admissions process. Accordingly, we have accepted and offered need-based aid to at least 5 undocumented students and offered them admission to the class of 2019. In keeping with our current undergraduate financial aid policy, Tufts will meet 100% of the demonstrated need of every undocumented student offered admission to Tufts.
The large immigrant community in Somerville will benefit from this as well, and it's important to Tufts to be a leader on this national issue.
I'm very happy that Tufts has come out in support of undocumented students going to receiving higher education. I definitely think that there's still more work to be done at Tufts and in this country to change some perspectives about undocumented immigrants and about education equity.
Somerville High School guidance counselor Ann Hertzberg has been working for years to help undocumented students figure out how to pay for college.
I think that a university like Tufts showing that it's open to working with all different kinds of students and actively recruiting students regardless of their status here will impact our students. I think it'll help open their eyes to sort of some of the issues going on in the local community, but also allow some students that previously weren't able to attend, a four-year university, especially students with really strong grade point averages that have done all the right things in high school, will now have an option to stay locally and attend a really good university.
Will Tufts University's new policy allow a greater number of undocumented students from Somerville High School to attend the university? We'll be following this story in the upcoming months. I'm Hadley Green, reporting for Somerville Neighborhood News.
You can learn more about SIM on its website, simforus.com. And check out our previous stories on the issue by going to somervilleneighborhoodnews.org and typing undocumented in the search box. Now another story about students. Somerville city officials estimate there are some 80 homeless youth currently in the school system from pre-kindergarten through high school. Reporter Yu Xiao Yun wanted to know more, so she started with Regina Bartoldo, director of the Parent Information Center.
A homeless student is a student who lacks regular, stable, adequate living condition, which can be a park, could be the streets, could be inside of a car, could be an emergency room. If they are in shelters, hotels and motels, they are confined to one room. They come to school very tired. Even if they are living locally, they come to school tired because it's a lot of adults movement in the house during the night, and they don't have their room. They sharing a bedroom with other people, and kids just don't get the right amount of sleep that they deserve to have. In Somerville, we have a strong commitment and to these children to keep them in school, and while in school to give all the support that they need. Because a homeless student, we have the same expectation for a homeless student as we have for any other student.
While most homeless youth are with their families at a shelter or motel, some are on their own for one reason or another. Even if they have a place to stay, they're classified as homeless. Jason Souza from Youth Harbors works with those high school students. He introduced Yu Xiao to Lorena.
My name is Lorena. I'm from Dominican. I come here like 2 years ago. First I was living with my sister, then I was living with my mom. Now I'm living alone. It's a house, but I share with other people. Well, I prefer live with my mom, of course. It's more easy, but I can't. She had her life. It's different. I can't.
In this specific case, overcrowding in the family happens when there are many individuals living inside of the household. There might be a mother, there might be her boyfriend, a sibling involved, and then you have a high school student who is in that mix and who is looking for their own privacy. So what happens is that there's a lot of friction that happens within the house. There's arguments, people are trying to live their own lives, trying to accomplish their own goals, and because all of this, things become so heated to the point where either the parent or the child feels like it's not safe for them to live and coexist in the same space anymore. And that often leads to the students becoming independent, trying to find their own space, and starting to begin their own adult lives, working, paying rent for themselves, paying utilities, and really trying to become independent and self-sufficient.
So today we're going to be growing beans in the...
After school I had to work. Afternoon I'm working in the projects. It's like a daycare to 6 or 8 p.m. Then I go home to do my homework, something in home. I go to sleep. I wake up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. In the morning I work in cleaning a restaurant. And after my job in the morning I come to school.
What happened? Come on.
In some cases it is better for the child to be out on their own if the parent is experiencing drug abuse or has legal issues going on, and sometimes if it's appropriate for the student to live out on their own, to become self-sufficient, to find an employment, to become responsible, then that's something that we definitely promote and something that we try to help them achieve.
Red light.
One of the things that Youth Harbors can offer as a program is providing financial assistance to students who are classified as being homeless unaccompanied youth. Hopefully help the student minimize the hours that they're working and try to focus more on school, because as a program, Youth Harbors is in general, if a high school student is working 30 to 40 hours a week, it's very difficult for them to complete their homework assignments, to get enough rest to be productive in school.
It's hard. Sometimes I'm in class and I want to sleep, I'm tired. It's hard, but it's my job, it's something that happened in the life.
The Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Education says that almost 9,500 high school-age students in public schools are experiencing homelessness on any given day. To learn more about homelessness, check out mahomeless.org. And you can learn more about youth harbors at rediscoveryinc.org/youth harbors. Now let's hear what's in this week's Somerville Journal.
Hello, this week in the Somerville Journal we'll have coverage of Tufts' plan to cut 35 janitors, we'll have a history of problems at the Union Square Fire Station, and we'll have coverage of our local Patriots Day celebrations. You can always catch us online at wickedlocal.com/Somerville, follow us on Twitter @VilleJournal, and you can get in touch with me at 617-629-3385 or datkinson@wickedlocal.com.
Now we take a look at the new zoning ordinance being proposed by the city. The sweeping code was delivered to the Board of Aldermen earlier this spring and has been discussed in meetings, at public hearings, in the news, and on the street. SNN News Director Jane Regan has this story.
The proposed zoning ordinance is over 300 pages long. I don't really have time to read that, but I did have time to catch up with Danielle McLean of the Somerville Journal, who wrote a good article summarizing some of the key points.
The new zoning encourages affordable housing. So in a major commercial hub like Union Square or next to an incoming transit system like the area behind me, if a developer wants to build a residential building with 7 or more units, 20% of those would have to be affordable housing. But in most other districts, the ratio is much lower. So if you're in a residential zone, the ratio would only be 12.5% affordable. Critics say that these numbers are not going to meet the affordable housing goals laid forth in Summer Vision. Summer Vision calls for 1,200 new units of affordable housing citywide. Critics say the only way to meet that 1,200 affordable housing goal is if you have 20% affordable housing citywide.
McLean also looked at density.
So the new zoning actually encourages property owners and developers to building additional buildings on large lots, depending on what zoning district they are in. So for instance, if a developer wants to build a house right here, the new zoning encourages them to build another house right here. In essence, this means Somerville could become denser.
And McLean considered open space.
The new zoning encourages open space, but not to the extent that is called for in Summer Vision. We're over here at Symphony Park, one of the new places the city is trying to build some open space, a publicly accessible park. Critics say the new zoning will bring in about 44 acres of open space, not the 125 acres that is called for in Summer Vision.
To read Danielle's article, Everything You Wanted to Know About Somerville's New Zoning Plan But Were Afraid to Ask, go to the Journal's website, somerville.wickedlocal.com. There have also been some great columns by Somerville residents in the Somerville Times. Their website is thesomervillenews.com. And of course, check out the city's law itself on the new zoning website, somervillema.gov/zoning. Some aldermen are really concerned with the proposed law, to the point that they think it should be thrown out. Others think that it can be fixed. I wanted to know what Ward 5 Alderman Mark Niedergang thought, so I caught up with him the other day.
Unfortunately, there are some major problems with the proposed zoning overhaul. So 3 of the biggest problems, in my opinion, are it changes the whole process by which mostly large projects can be approved and restricts much more the impact that the community can have on affecting what can get built. And that's a problem. Another major problem is that in Somerville, we desperately need more commercial development in order to increase the tax base and also to bring jobs here. And that's a consensus amongst the leaders in the city. Unfortunately, the new proposed zoning doesn't get the balance right between residential and commercial development. It would be too easy for lots and lots of luxury condos to be built all over the city, including in places where we want offices to go in, which generate jobs and tax revenue. So that's a bad thing. They need to go back to the drawing board and get the balance between residential incentives and commercial development incentives. And a third major issue is that while the zoning has been promoted as protecting and conserving our residential neighborhoods, which I completely agree with, in fact, ironically, it allows continued infill development.
Alderman Niedergang wrote a 5-page list of concerns for his blog.
The administration has come forward with a formal proposal, but they have said that they are willing to, that they want feedback and criticism, and that they will adjust it, amend it, and change it accordingly. Unfortunately, there's not just 3 or 4 major concerns, there's really a dozen. And I should say that, you know, these are not necessarily my personal analysis. There are lots of smart people out there who have been looking at the zoning ordinance, the proposal, and writing up their analyses. And most of what I am talking about comes from other people's analyses. So there is a formal process that involves a public hearing and a public comment period, and then a 90-day window during which the Board of Aldermen can consider a zoning proposal, and if nothing is done at the end of those 90 days, the proposal simply dies. We could also vote it down, or we could approve it, or some amended version of it if we wished. Right now, my sense is that most of the members of the board share a lot of concerns that I have. The administration now, the planning department, are in the process of revising their original draft based on the extensive feedback that they've gotten from the public, and they'll be coming forward with some revised ideas at a meeting we're going to be having on May 6th at 6 o'clock in City Hall. But I believe, and I think most of my colleagues on the Board of Aldermen believe, that there simply isn't enough time in the 90-day window, which ends at the end of June, for us to look at a new set of proposals that fix the problems that existed and discuss it and figure out whether it makes sense or not. So I think most likely this current proposal will die or maybe be voted down. And my hope is that the administration takes the feedback they've gotten and comes forward with a new and dramatically different proposal this fall, which would be much more in the ballpark of something that the Board of Aldermen would be willing to consider approving.
The alderman asked me to meet him at Highland and Cedar. I wasn't sure why.
We're standing at the corner of Cedar Street and Highland Avenue in Ward 5 in front of the Quick Mart, which was a convenience store which closed about 9 months ago. And it's been purchased by a developer who wants to put up a mixed-use housing and commercial project here. And there's been 2 neighborhood meetings, and one of the issues around this is whether this should be 3 stories or 4 stories at this site. There's been a lot of public discussion and debate. The developer had submitted a proposal to have a 4-story building, 44 feet high, with 7 units of housing and a commercial space on the first floor. And this is being discussed and debated, and it's come up as part of the zoning overhaul because the administration's proposal has this as 3 stories, and the developer has petitioned to make it a 4-story area. So we have a 3-story building on this side, and on this side there's a 5-story building. So these are the kinds of development issues, I think it's illustrative, these are the kinds of development issues that we have in particular spots in our neighborhoods. This is where the rubber meets the road on zoning. It really affects what our neighborhoods are going to look like, and I thought this would be a good example of that.
Another place the rubber will meet the road is in Union Square. According to the proposed ordinance, most of the Union Square area would be zoned MU5 for 5 stories, 60 feet for residential and 70 feet for commercial. That's pretty tall. It's kind of hard to imagine, but here are some ideas of what that might look like. And here's an artist's drawing. Some critics are concerned about the canyon that might be created. Others point out that the MU5 zoning is right next to residential properties, meaning houses could back up to a 70-foot wall. City Hall noted that the Planning Division is pleased with the public comment process. As of April 16th, City Hall had received over 1,000 comments at the public hearing, in letters, and on the website. What will happen at the May 6th meeting? Can the current ordinance be fixed up, or will it be thrown out, and will the city have to go back to the drawing board? We'll keep you posted on this issue. For Somerville Neighborhood News, I'm Jane Regan.
The turnout for the Fight for 15 march was the biggest yet. Thousands filled the Boston streets from Huntington Avenue to Chinatown.
I'm here to get a minimum wage of $15 an hour because I know I'm worth way more than what I'm making right now. This march means so much to me because I work with a bunch of people who deserve a lot more than what they're making right now. We're a bunch of hard workers who are making, like, some of us just make minimum wage, some of us are doing all we can to get this company going, but I feel like we're just getting ripped off with the little change that they're giving us at the end of the day.
Marchers came from all over, like Boston City Councilor Tito Jackson, who supports raising the minimum wage.
I've been involved since the beginning of Fight for 15. In the city of Boston, unless you make $15 an hour, you won't be able to live in the city of Boston. These are the hardest working workers that we have. People who are low-wage workers, are hospital workers, people who are cleaning all of the buildings in the city of Boston, and they deserve to be made whole, and they deserve to have the prosperity that the rest of the city of Boston has.
Unions and others organized and demonstrated all last year to demand the hikes to $15, but instead only won 9. Northeastern students and professors also marched to demand better wages for adjunct professors.
So for me, being an adjunct professor means that I've always worked at 2 different schools. I never know what kind of work I'm going to have the next semester. It means that I didn't have benefits from my job until I got a good union job at UMass Boston. And it means it's really hard to plan for the future, and it's hard to stay committed to one institution because you never know what kind of work you're going to have coming up.
So right now I'm working in the kitchen. I'm actually one of the line cooks that we have right there. I'm the night coach. So I'm working from 6 till sometimes 4 in the morning, just like closing down the kitchen with just like a couple of dishwashers. And at the end of the night, I smell like food. My feet hurt, and I'm just sweating from like working constantly all day. And I just go home, get tired, go to sleep, wake up, and do it again.
I work 2 jobs. I'm a single mom. I have 2 kids, and in the past, even when I've had a full-time job, I've had to have a second job.
Somerville should care because in Somerville, we have a growth of so many low-wage jobs, whether it's all the retail outfits at Assembly Square, the restaurants in Davis Square, we've got Target, we've got the supermarkets, we've got 5 or 6 supermarkets. You know, we have an awful lot of low-wage workers in the city. We even have municipal employees that make less than $15 an hour. So this is an issue for Somerville as it is an issue for Boston or Massachusetts. There are thousands of people in Somerville today that are being, with the incredible rents that people have to pay in Somerville, and they're being asked to work for $9 and $10 an hour. That's not fair. When you show up to work, you should get a livable wage.
On April 15th, more than 60,000 people in 200 cities continued the Fight for 15. Will these marches impact wage levels in the state for workers in restaurants like Subway and other establishments? We'll keep you posted. I'm Laura Onyenaho, Somerville Neighborhood News.
To learn more and to see photos and news coverage from across the nation, check out the Fight for 15 website, fightfor15.org/April 15th. Interestingly, a new study documents how everyone in the U.S. pays for the country's low wages. According to the University of California, Berkeley Center for Labor, U.S. taxpayers pay roughly $153 billion each year to subsidize employers who refuse to pay a livable wage. Half of all fast food workers receive public assistance. Almost 3/4 of the people and families enrolled in the country's major public support programs like food stamps and Medicaid are members of working families. The report is called The High Public Cost of Low Wages, and it's available at laborcenter.berkeley.edu. Now over to Greentown Labs to learn about a competition that could help Somerville reach its goal of becoming a carbon neutral city by the year 2050.
The City of Somerville and the MIT Climate Collab kicked off a global contest on April 7th.
So the theme of this contest is atypical ideas for carbon neutrality. The mayor of Somerville, Joe Curtatone, set a goal in 2014 that we would plan to make Somerville a carbon neutral city by 2050. And that's a huge goal. And there's going to be a lot of different ways to get there. Once you set a goal like that, pretty much everything is on the table. But we have a tradition in Somerville of doing things differently. Some might say innovatively, but what our mayor often says a lot to us is, give me your abnormal ideas. And that's a word.
The MIT Climate Collab is the project co-sponsor.
The MIT Climate Collab is a crowdsourcing platform that uses a contest format to try to solve climate change related problems using the wisdom of the crowd. It's a network of over 30,000 people from around the globe who have been participating for a couple years, and we are doing one of the first geographic and city focused contests. So we're looking for ideas for Somerville from folks all around the world.
The Somerville contest is one of 22 that all have a deadline of May 16th. The April 7th event was held so that people could ask questions. Some queries came from the room.
I think this contest is great, and it's great that the goal is 2050, but it also feels like wishful thinking that we have until 2050 to make these kinds of changes. So is there the possibility that this can be scaled up much quicker? Are you thinking of that? Are you aware of the need that it really does need to happen way before 2050?
We are definitely looking for things that we can start doing now.
And some queries came from the ether.
But it's hard. Is the city only looking for easy solutions, or is it willing to make some non-monetary sacrifices in order to achieve this goal?
We are not just looking for easy solutions. In fact, we're looking primarily for the ones that aren't easy. We're really at the beginning of a long-term climate change plan, and what we want at the end is for Somerville to be really making a difference in reducing climate change acceleration, right? So become carbon neutral, but we also want to prepare ourselves for the impacts of climate change. This is going to be a big multi-year planning process. But now that we're at the beginning, we're thinking, what are some things that our community can chew over as we're developing this plan? So what are some of the unusual things that creative people around the world and here in Somerville might have that when we start our planning process, we can bring out and say, these are some of the top ones. Let's think about this. Does this make sense in addition to some of the more traditional technical things that are inevitably going to come up as we make a plan for 2050?
Not too many people showed up, and so far there are only 11 contest entries for a number of different categories. It's a chance to help the city, to help the planet, and you might just win a prize. Maybe I should apply. For Somerville Neighborhood News, I'm Jane Reed.
The contest closes on May 16th, so you've still got some time to take part. To learn more, to submit an idea, or to comment, go to the city's new climate change webpage, somervillema.gov/sustainaville, or go to the Climate Collab website, climatecollab.org. Well, that's it for tonight. We'll be back on May 5th at 7 p.m. on Channel 3. In the meantime, you can watch and read our news stories at somervilleneighborhoodnews.org and check out our Facebook page, SCATV SNN. Share your favorite segments or tweet us at SCATV SNN. We welcome you to get involved, become a reporter, or just send your ideas. Call us at 617-628-8826 or email us at news@scatvsomerville.org. I'm Justin Schreier. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you around the neighborhood.